Okay. Hey, so uh, welcome to the podcast of a productive agent powered by Aubrey Home Loans. So today we have a really special guest. We have Adam Speth. Adam Speth is a top producing real estate agent, but more than that, he's the 2023 president of the Northern Wasatch Association. Man, what an honor that is to have that, right? Who would have thought I'm here making cold calls, and next thing you know, I got a podcast with the president, right? So yeah, good job, right? And so here we are. So Adam and I, we got to talking, and and the topic came up of the market and that kind of stuff. And so we have a real housing shortage here in Utah, and that's what we're here to talk about. What can be done? What could we as in the real estate industry do? What can the politicians do? The main it starts with education. People just have to know. Is that a fair assessment, Adam?
Yeah,
Eh,
that's kind of what we're here to talk about. It's not so much how to be a productive agent, but
no, no.
we're trying to educate our realtor members. We're trying to educate the public, and we're trying to educate the local cities on why we have a housing shortage
Right,
and what we can do about it.
right.
So I'm excited to be on your show. I appreciate you having me because we need to spread this message because it's very important, and it's one of those things where it's hit us so quickly that we got a little bit of whiplash, and we needed to take some action on it.
Right. So back us up and how where we are, right? We have a housing shortage. So kind of give us a little background on how we kind of got here.
So I started in this business in 2004.
Right.
So I saw kind of the last, what we went through in 2020 and 21 and 22, the first part of 22 was a lot like 06, 07, 08. I mean,
Right.
it was a frenzy. There was bidding wars everywhere. It was nuts.
But we had
Mainly
inventory back
caused,
then.
we had plenty of inventory back then.
Right. We had too much
Mainly,
actually.
mainly it was caused by, subprime loans that were really, really easy to get financing, and they didn't really do much research on people's actual income. And
Right.
it was a stated income loan kind of environment. So eventually that imploded, and we had more houses than people, and
Right.
because we had so many investment properties and whatever, and then the housing market kind of the interest rates started to adjust, and foreclosures started to hit, and then the bottom fell out, and then we had the Great Recession and the housing
Right.
crisis of 2008.
Right.
So the
So
side
then
effect of
so
that,
right so in 2008 we actually had an abundance of it. We had too many
we had a
houses.
surplus of homes at that point.
Right. Okay. Right.
And so because we had a surplus of homes, there was a lot of short sales, there was a lot of foreclosures, people couldn't liquidate, and we had a really tough time there between about 2008, about 2011, 2012, depending on the area, where we kind of broke even, and then
Right.
we kind of leveled out to where our population and our households met the amount of homes or townhomes or
Right.
apartments or just units. Our
Right. Family
households
units and family units and the number of houses were kind of in line.
they were in line at that point.
Right.
But what
But
happened
back
was,
then there was no building going on, right?
well, that's what happened is a lot of builders went out of business, and a lot of
Right.
people got out of building. And so for the next, 10 to 30, depending on where you're at, but for about the next 10 years, we were building about 50% of where we needed to be to keep up with our household.
Right.
Right. So we call it a housing gap. It's like a deficit of new construction versus new households.
New
And
household
so
formations. Yeah.
all of the 2010s, between 2010 and 2020, we saw the greatest housing disparity in U.S. history, and also Utah's history, where we didn't have enough. We weren't producing enough houses to keep up with the demand for
Right.
the
Well, and
house.
especially in Utah, I mean, we have more, we have our more internal growth than most states.
Yeah, we have more
In
kids.
fact, all states, right?
Yeah, we have more
Yeah.
kids.
I mean, we have what 3.2 million people, and like 33% are under 18.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I mean
and
that means
that's
every
part of
year you have a new crop coming in. You
and
know,
that's part of the emergency that we're at today. Is it's going to get worse. So um, we have a housing deficiency, a housing gap. You know, we have a supply and demand issue, and
right,
that is kind of compounded. And then you know, and then because of that, a lot of builders started building higher end homes
right.
because
Well, especially when they were giving money away at 2.5%, two and three
yeah,
percent.
yeah,
Yeah,
interest rates are at three, 3.5, 3.25, 2.5 during COVID. Um, you know, it was a wild time in real estate where we had a higher demand, a low supply. Builders started building high end stuff, and what got left behind was the starter home.
right.
So the
Well,
entry
land
level
prices kept going up. The builders couldn't build starter homes.
they could, but it
Right.
was more profitable to
Well,
build.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's true.
yeah, and so fast forward to 2020, then COVID hits, and then you know things destabilized even more because they dropped interest rates instead of raised them. And people started rethinking their housing situation. They started
Right,
rethinking where they wanted to live, and we saw a lot of mobility going on. Um, but the bottom line is what has happened is we have a severe housing deficit versus the houses we have available,
right,
and interest rates, you know, doubled last year
right. And
overnight.
yeah, in a very, very short period of time.
But
So they
the other main issue that I wanted to really drive home is between, you know, 2018, 2019, and now. Um, Traditionally in America, historically, starter homes represent 25 to 35% of the housing starts. During that time, it was about 8%.
wow.
So when we needed them most, we weren't getting enough entry level starter price homes,
Right,
and not not all of them are going to be homes anymore because we're running out of land. Land has become, you know, the last statistic I saw since 1991, real estate values have gone up 600% in Utah.
that's amazing.
600%. So
Oh
if
yeah,
you're if
when I first started selling here, I mean, we were buying flips in Sugar House for like 80 grand
yeah
and fixing them up and selling them for 125.
yeah yeah yeah
Today
so
you couldn't even buy a lot for that.
no, you couldn't. Um, so essentially, where we're at now is the starter home wasn't being built for about the last, you know, 7 years or so.
Right,
Um, and then when interest rates shifted, what that did was the median income in Utah is $75,000 a year.
right,
At, you know, 3% interest rate, that's $500,000 purchase price.
right,
Well, when you jump to 6.5%, that $500,000 just turned to 350.
right,
So the purchase power of the median income person went from 500 to 350.
right,
Unfortunately, because no starter homes were being built over the last, you know, 5 or 6 years. Well, they were, but they were at a rate of 8%, not
right,
35% where we needed
right,
them to keep up with the population growth because we weren't even building enough houses at all,
right.
including
Just for our own
apartments.
internal growth. Forget the immigration.
Yeah, forget the immigration, just our own internal growth.
And that, like you said, that fueled the builders building the bigger houses because you get what we call equity refugees coming from California. You know, they're
Yeah,
selling a house for 1.2 million. Come here and they'll pay like, here's 600 grand. I'll be glad to pay that all day long.
yeah, they come from an area. I mean, people only migrate to improve their lives. They don't
Right,
migrate to make their lives worse. So
right.
people that could sell in an area that, you know, they could sell their house for $1.5 million and come here and
Yeah,
spend 5 or 6, and they
and
get
have a twice the size house.
twice the size house, newer, nicer, better.
Right,
So
and no debt.
there was no incentive in a free market capitalized system to build starter homes because they could make more money on the higher end homes. And
Right,
then the other part of it is we've seen huge gains in the apartment industry.
Right.
Um, a lot of that has to do with some tax incentives for
Right.
opportunity zones, but um, that's also I'm, don't get me wrong, I'm not against apartments. I'm against oversupply of anything. And
Right.
so we've seen huge gains in apartments households. We've seen huge gains in McMansion households, is what I call them. I don't know if it's
Right.
technical term. You heard
Yeah,
that.
McMansions, upper end homes.
Yeah. So those have seen huge gains. We have seen very little gains, less than 10% of the new doors being either apartments or McMansions. Less than 10% have been considered starter entry level homes, owner occupied for sale.
Right.
We've seen a lot of townhomes built, and then the builders just keep them and rent them.
Right.
But so now we're at crisis level. Now interest rates have shifted. The $65,000 to $75,000 a year person is now at a range of $250,000 to $350,000 a year, and there's no inventory, or
Right.
$350,000 purchase price, and there's no inventory there.
Right.
So we are with the Northern Wasatch Association of Realtors, with our government affairs committee. We're doing a really big push in association with the Utah Association of Realtors and Jed Nilsson, the president of UAR. We're going to make a big push for new construction starter priced units. So, and starter homes aren't necessarily homes anymore. They could be small lots, single family detached, but I mean really small lots, because again,
Right.
you go back to the prices of land, the land prices have gone up 6 times. So, what you could develop an acre for on 3 or 4 lots,
Right.
to get, the same kind of value to build something under in the 300s or even the low 4s. You've got to have density. And so most people think density is apartments, right? So we've got to change that mindset, that
Right.
all of those apartments you see, those could be condos, all those townhomes could be for sale, and all these small single family detached small lot single family homes are
Right.
what we're in need of
Yeah,
for sale.
and you have, to compound it, you have these institutional buyers come in,
Oh God,
and
I
they
haven't even
just
got into the institutional buyers.
right. Right. That's like a whole nother, that's just, another just log on the fire, I guess.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? And so, and the other part of it too is because we don't have enough starter homes to get to the starter home people, they have to rent, and so that
Right.
presses rents higher. So
Right.
it's the housing shortage, like anything, it's supply and demand.
Right.
You don't have
Simple as
enough
that.
supply for the
Price goes up.
demand of human beings that need a roof over their head, it's just going to drive the prices up.
Right.
So we're
And
pushing.
then at some point, you're not going to see any grandchildren.
No, unless, yeah, I mean, you will, because their
I mean, that's
parents,
what's going to happen.
they'll be you'll be in your basement.
Oh yeah, you'll see them.
you
Yeah,
you
never
see it more
mind.
than you want to.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, they'll be in your basement. Yeah.
So we've got a big push with the realtors and our lobbyist group and the local association and the state association, along with the home builders association. We all feel the same way, that we really need to push for starter homes, owner occupied,
Right.
entry level homes, because without the entry level, you can ask anybody that has a big nice house, is
Right.
this your first house?
No.
Well, no,
Right.
I bought this house and then I sold it, and then I bought this house and then I sold it.
Right.
Now I'm in this house.
Right.
But if there's no
No play.
first
There's
step
no rung on the ladder. Right. There's got to be a rung low enough to climb up.
or a first step or whatever you want to call it, but you've got to have access to being a homeowner. And if that
Right.
access is a condo, so be it. If that access is a
Right.
townhouse, so be it. If that
Mm-hmm.
access is a single family small lot, whatever
Right.
entry point you need to get into homeownership, to get to the McMansion
Right.
down the road. That's what we're fighting for. We need more owner occupied, entry level, first step, first rung, whatever you want to call it. We need
Right.
the millennials need a shot at homeownership. And
Right.
so
Yeah. I mean, it's
us.
there's a years ago I remember reading an article. It was that literacy is actually tied to homeownership.
It is.
And the
That's a
premise
good
was
one.
on there that when people rent, they tend to move a lot.
Right.
And then if kids are moving schools all the time, they're always trying to fit in and they're not focused on learning. They're moving from school to school and it's brutal. But a kid that's like, if you had the same classmates from kindergarten all the way through high school, life is so stable, you tend to learn better.
You do. In
But that
fact,
was an interesting study.
the study that I read, the scores are 6 times higher.
Wow.
I mean, it's significant.
Well, and then what do they call it? The net worth of home ownership versus renters is dramatic.
It's drastic. It's like
Yeah.
40 times higher. Because you think about it, being in a home, it stabilizes you, and psychologically, I can't even explain it, man. It's a rite of passage for
Mm-hmm.
most people. Like, so whether it's buying a condo or house or townhome or
Oh yeah,
any
your
kind of,
chest comes out. This is mine.
yeah, the pride of ownership's real, and it makes people feel like they've really graduated into adulthood.
Right.
Number one. Number two, it stabilizes them in their community.
Right.
They've got roots now.
And it
They're
stabilizes the community itself.
and so if you have more homeowners, you have more stable people that care about their community because they all own.
Right.
And
Less crime, everything,
absolutely. So
which means the cost of services go down.
yep, yeah. So and again, the more of these homeowners we get into homeownership, the less press it puts on rents, and then rent stabilize, or in some cases could come down. So
Right.
I mean, it's really just a bit of a no brainer. And so, but the hard part is we run into a lot of the problems, with Wall Street buying houses and opportunity zones where apartment builders are given tax breaks to build apartments
Right.
for 10 years.
Right.
So we've got a lot of challenges that way. And then we've got a lot of challenges with the cities.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the not in my backyard people.
Yeah,
That
the whole
like to
NIMBYism,
see.
not in my backyard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say that's one of the bigger problems we face, or it's just one
Um,
of many?
one of many, but one of the main ones
Right. It's one of the
in
bigger ones.
northern
Yeah.
Utah. So
Right. Well,
there's a
same
lot of,
here in Salt Lake County too.
is it?
Yeah. Nobody wants it in their backyard. Nobody wants a,
which
slew of townhomes.
which which makes me laugh, right? Because I'm about private property rights. I
Yeah,
love
me
being
too.
American, and I love having private property rights. We're one of the only countries that does that, right? So
To the degree that we do. Yeah.
when somebody says not in my backyard, I'm like, no, your neighbor's yard. Like you
Right.
want to tell your neighbor what to do with their land, what to do
Right.
with their house. I've
Yeah. I'm
never.
so laissez-faire. I don't even like zoning, period. You know, and that's a little extreme. And then people say, well, what's to prevent, like somebody putting up like a stripper club in the middle of a residential neighborhood? And my answer to that always is, I don't know, how about lack of demand?
Yeah,
It's
right.
like,
They're going to go out of business, right? Yeah.
right, they won't go there.
Well, the neighbors might burn the place down too. So.
Right.
But
Well,
but as far as zoning goes, that's one of the things that we've run into is they the not in my backyard people are electing people that aren't looking at the growth and the future of their community.
right.
They're trying to stop growth.
Well, you
It's like
can't. It's like trying to keep your kid from growing up.
yeah, no,
You,
it's like
it's going
trying
to
to
happen
stop.
whether you like it or not.
It's like trying to stop a river.
Right.
You're just gonna get bowled over. But so essentially, what has happened is because we've got this anti-growth
Mindset, if you
attitude
will.
with
Right.
citizens and with their city people, we're not able to build what we need. We know what we need. We've been
Right.
talking about this. You can Google Utah Housing Gap Coalition.
Okay.
You can tell your listeners, Google Utah Housing Gap Coalition.
Well, you just did.
You'll see
You just
videos as
told them.
far back as 2018.
Right.
We've been talking about this with the cities and with the government since
Right.
5 years, since before COVID.
Right.
2 years before COVID. We saw that there was a housing gap. We started to address it. And we made some gains. We actually did some really good gains with some of the cities, but the citizens saw so many houses going up because we needed to. We need a decade to catch up on.
Right.
The citizens started seeing that growth and they started freaking out. And that's when the NIMBYism really started to step up. And then local elections, because it's not a national election, so few people vote, that the
Right.
NIMBY candidates would get into they'd get elected to city council, and then they'd just be like, no, stop.
Right.
And so they're making it worse.
Right.
And unfortunately, they think the growth is coming from California or from wherever else. They think it's coming from out of state. But the reality is the statistics are 2/3 to 75% is coming from their own households.
Right.
So,
right. Just right here in Utah. Yeah.
So it's like the old saying goes, it's literally cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Right.
You're literally hurting your own family and your own citizens and your own community.
Right.
To stop growth from people who can afford whatever you throw at them.
Right.
So,
well, and then the only people that can afford to come here are equity refugees from California.
And that's the conversation that I've had with people is like, look, this anti-growth mentality to stop California or stop whoever from coming here.
Whomever, right.
You just made it so they're the only ones that can afford to be here. Right. And you've only hurt your own citizens. Your local Utah people making under $100,000 a year cannot afford to buy in pretty much any town.
What did Jim Wood say? I think at the breakfast, you got to be like at 104,000 now to afford the median price.
104,000 in most cities, and in the higher end cities, it's like 125, 135.
Right.
To buy a median income home.
Right. So you have two choices, right? Either live in your parents' basements or move out of state.
Yeah.
And it's
or
not
pay for an overpriced apartment. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so. And then with multiple roommates,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, very few people can afford to live on their own.
So because that's where we're at. I mean, like I go back to 2018, 2019, 2020 when it was a forecast. Like, hey, if we don't do this,
we're gonna have a problem. Well, now we have the problem.
Now we're in the storm, right? It's not a forecast anymore. It's not a weather prediction. Now we're in the shitstorm.
We're in the eye of the storm right now.
Yeah. So the only solution is we've got to really ramp up development, and that development specifically is owner-occupied starter units.
Right.
Not rentals, not McMansions. And if somebody wants to build McMansions or they can get their, apartments passed and zoned for it, whatever, go for it.
Right.
But the bucket that needs to be filled, if you had 3 buckets, one is apartments, one is McMansions, one is starter homes.
Right.
The only one that is empty is starter homes. The other ones have been resupplied.
Right.
It's the starter homes that we need to be supplied. So we're pushing really hard to educate the cities on what is going on, to educate the citizens on what is going on, and mainly to educate our realtors. Okay. So the reason I wanted to come on here today is to educate the realtors that listen to your podcast and go, okay, here's the problem. We don't have enough owner-occupied units. We got plenty of rentals. We got plenty of big-ass houses. We don't have enough starter homes. That's not going to necessarily be homes. It could be condos, it could be townhomes.
Right.
Go to your citizens and go to your cities and tell them we want owner-occupied starter homes.
Right.
In fact, if you go to the Standard Examiner today, today's March 3rd, but your podcast will come out later. You can Google Standard Examiner, Adam Speth, and click on starter home. I just did an article in the newspaper today. I know nobody reads it, but it's still online.
Well, I read it if it's online.
I got a few physical copies. I'm going to give them away to
one to your mom,
I'm going to give them to a few of the mayors, maybe. But
right.
It spells it out. So everything that I'm talking about is spelled out in the article. It's pretty easy to understand. And
so what are some things that can be done besides, obviously the education and getting the word out that this is no longer, like you said, a forecast. This is, we're in the storm. So obviously educating is the first, but like, what are some things like, I know SB 240, right? Senate Bill 240. They're calling it the first time buyer assistance, right?
We've
So
got several programs that we're looking at, and because the legislative session isn't over, I'm not sure what's going to pass.
I see.
But we're looking at so we've got to incentivize, we've got to speed things up, and we've got to incentivize builders to build in that starter home price range. So I'm doing some education with the Home Builders Association, to be like, look, here's the shift. Here's why your homes are sitting there, and a lot of them are just sitting there panicked that their homes aren't going to sell, and some of them might not because
Right.
interest rates shifted so quickly. For example, if you were at 650, you lost 30% of your buying power when the interest rates went up. That person is now qualified at 480.
Right.
So if I was the builder, I would recommend, hey, build where the buyers just went, because interest rates aren't going to drop down into the threes or fours anytime soon. Definitely
No,
not
they're
the
not going to go
twos.
that low.
No,
No, no,
no.
no. That's a long gone thing. That was and it went on too long. There's
That
arguments
was the
there.
government buying loans and
Right. They're
keeping
buying
interest rates
mortgage-backed
artificially low.
securities, right?
Yeah.
Artificially holding the rates down. When the inflation started, the rate, because normally rates go where inflation goes. But we
Right.
had inflation going up, but rates were staying down here. And then then the government had to like panic and go and catch up. And
Yep.
that's what happened. So if
Yeah.
rates would have gradually worked their way up, we wouldn't have as much whiplash.
Exactly. And it was whiplash. I mean, we've never seen interest rates double
No,
2 months
in
in
months. No,
U.S. history.
and it's a record breaker. I mean, it's never done that since they've been tracking rates.
And so, as I would recommend to builders, and I'm going to be recommending to builders that, hey, look, build where the buyers went. Here's the
Right.
median income in Utah. Here's what they can afford. Let's figure out how to buy there. And so,
Right.
what we're doing as the Realtor Association in Utah, we're trying to support some, along with the Home Builders Association on most of them. We're trying to support some legislation to help incentivize the cities and help incentivize the builders. So one of the program you were talking about is up to a $20,000 grant
Right.
for three things: first-time home buyer, must be new construction, and under 450.
Right.
So
So the idea there is, by giving buyers money, that the builders may chase that money.
exactly, 100%.
Yeah, that's
And then
yeah.
and then we've got some other legislation to speed things up with the city, so they can have one shot at the development agreement and not keep going back and just dragging it out and dragging it out and dragging it out. They get one
Right.
shot to do
Well, what
their.
can the state do to incentivize cities? I mean, cities are like, I don't know. Because you got NIMBYism you're fighting. You got builders. Is 20 grand enough to help
I don't
chase
think
for the
that
builders to chase it?
I don't think legislation is necessarily the answer. There is some legislation we have to do. We have to do some motivation through
Well, not necessarily
incentives.
legislation. It's usually the only way governments can. State government can take Fed money and incentivize.
So that is one of the other things we're looking at. But again, I don't know what's going to pass because the
Right.
legislative session is still going. But if
When's
they
that over?
don't,
I thought it was over yesterday, and
I
apparently
don't.
not.
I haven't heard the final results. So,
Right, I got it.
but
No, I meant the legislation the session.
I don't know. So
Okay.
what I'm getting at is we've got another bill that could potentially penalize cities for not. So the state doesn't have to give them the federal money if they don't comply with the state's
Statutes, right?
statutes
Yeah,
to.
like the ADU unit, because the state passed a rule that ADUs are permitted everywhere, and
Right.
some cities are saying no, you can't do that. And so, what's the problem? We talked about that. So the problem is you can't do anything,
Yeah.
and so that's an issue.
And so yeah, there's nothing you can do because you can't. If you sue the city and win, you have to spend a bunch of money to do it. The only thing they can do is comply. Like
Right. You
not
win the right to go move into an apartment.
they're protected, right? So
Right.
I think the legislation, and that'll be announced probably next week or whenever it's finalized, and we'll do a big announcement on it. But we've got some really good legislation coming. But I think what we need to do is the more we educate people, the more we can motivate action. If you try and push the state tried to push the cities, and the cities pushed back.
Right.
So what we're trying to do on a local association level is we're trying to educate our members, to educate the cities, to educate the local people,
Right.
to try and solve this problem with us.
Right. We
So
got to get over the fence conversations going on,
for sure.
the neighbor to
So
neighbor conversation to solve, because, I mean, the average person can't move up. What I mean, where are you going to go? If I'm sitting on a 2.75% interest rate,
yeah,
I paid half of what it's worth. So to
well,
step up,
and that's
I'd
one of
have
the
to pay
reasons
four times what I paid for this.
that's one of the reasons why we're pushing new construction a lot too. Is the people that are in their house that have low interest rates, they just aren't motivated to move.
No, I'm not.
They're probably going to remodel before they move. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, yeah,
the
you can
new
add an addition on the back of your house cheaper than moving.
Yeah, and honestly, that's why the ADU is so important too, because it helps the household thing. So if you got an empty basement and you want to turn it into a rental and rent it out to somebody,
Right.
go for it. If you're an owner-occupied person
Right.
and you
Yeah,
want
as
to
long
rent
as
out
it's
your
owner
basement,
occupied.
as
Right.
long that's criteria. That's what the cities don't want, is a bunch of duplexes. But so if you're owner-occupied, you can rent out your basement, or if you've got a big shop and you have an apartment upstairs, or you've got a
Right.
pool house, quote unquote. Um, you know, you might still get pushback from these cities, but with the legislation we're passing, I think it'll help a little bit to where to be able to get an ADU,
So,
accessory
what's the
dwelling unit.
legislation to that? So the legislation for that is
I
to
don't have
give,
it in front of me, Rob.
no, I mean, not the bill or anything, but I mean, what's the goal? The achievement is that I think I
We
read
need
something
more
where,
households. We need more units, and those units
but
can be accomplished in a lot of different ways.
right. So like the ADU, where if the city says, no, you can't do it. So I think I read legislation is that if you do sue the city has to pay legal costs.
I don't know if
Because,
that one's going to pass.
okay.
I
So the
wish it
idea is,
would.
yeah,
And
no,
maybe it will. I don't know. I wish it would, but I don't know if that one's going to work. But I'm pretty sure with the momentum that we're gaining and the public support that we're gaining, um, if there's additional legislation that needs to be passed in the next legislative session, we'll have the support for it. But
so here's
I
here's one of my ideas to get the word out. Things like this would be great. I mean, we have a podcast, we have a conversation. I don't know how many people are going to listen to it. Who knows, right? But and I've been saying this to the boards. It seems like it goes on deaf ears. But one of the best things we can do, the best way to use our resources, right, rather than buying, billboards and bus ads, is just create videos that the agents can brand themselves to. In other words, have it, the intro blank where the agent can put their brand on the front of it. I mean, here, you want to raise money for RPAC? Have a video that explains this in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, right? And say for $50, we'll add your logo on the front of the video so you can take it out. And what they tend to do is always, they're branding the board, and like, I don't, the agents don't want to do that. They want to brand themselves.
Mhm.
So, and then each agent could take that video and plaster social media. I think you'll get more traction with that kind of investment because it's a minimal investment. Create the video, give it to the agents.
Mhm.
I think that's a very simple way of getting a lot of, a big megaphone.
Yeah, and I've never heard of that. So yeah, I think that's not a bad idea.
Everybody I ever tell that to, oh yeah, that's a good idea. But then, they go on their politics, whatever. It's like, okay,
I,
whatever.
I'm only here, Rob, and
No,
my
you're not in
primary.
politics. You're there on a mission. I
No,
get it.
I have nothing to do with politics. I don't care about politicians. I'm
Right.
not a lobbyist. My
Right.
Here's why I'm here is every time somebody comes in my office, they want to buy a house, I get them pre-qualified, and they only qualify for 250,
Right.
or they only qualify for 300. I had a gal come in my office. Her name is Janelle. She's a military gal because I live in Layton, so we do a lot
Right.
with Hill Air Force Base. And we got her pre-qualified at 315. We get on the MLS and see what's there, and I thought it was broken.
Right.
I swear to
Smacking the
God,
side of the monitor,
I thought it was broken.
Right,
And look, I raised the price. Lo and behold, there's nothing there.
right.
There was zero. There was zero houses on the market. And and that's why I'm on this kind of a crusade almost. Like,
Well, not, and I'm here to help you
it's
with
just
it. I mean,
singleness of purpose, man. All I care about is getting builders and getting cities to build as many freaking starter homes as they can possibly build as
right.
fast as they can build them. I don't give a shit about anything else. That's all I care about.
You the
Because
man.
I'm tired of it, man. I'm tired of people coming in. They have and they did everything right. They
Right.
have a
They
down
save
payment,
money.
they
Right. They
have an
got, right,
education, they got a good job, and they can't win the prize they've been working their ass off for their whole life.
right. Yeah. I've read articles, where the millennials are like, hey, you guys had a shot. We don't have a shot.
Read my newspaper article today.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
did. I actually read yours.
good.
Yeah. They're just saying, yeah, maybe that's where I read it. I don't know. My age, sometimes disinformation like
That's
commingles
probably
itself.
yeah. And I mean, and here's the thing is, we're going to push this agenda and push this agenda as hard as we can. And if we can't get it done, I mean, I think that if politicians were smart, they'd realize the millennials are the biggest voting bloc
Right.
in America.
Yeah. They're the largest population. Right. They're the
Yeah,
large. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
uh, I would recommend that you definitely shift your policies to take care of the next generation because the next generation is the future, and we need to focus on those guys.
Yeah, the problem that I see with that stuff, like, because I live in Cottonwood Heights, and I remember there was a guy when he was building a 6-story building along the freeway there, and he wanted to go to 12, and they came out in droves to stop this guy, and these are all empty nesters,
Mm-hmm.
the baby boomers and stuff, they ran the schools into the ground, and here's a building that would pay the property tax of about 200 homes, right? But if you added 200 homes to a city, well, you got to add another school. So here you're going to have property tax of 200 homes without adding one child to the school district. I mean, if I had my druthers, I would line the freeway up with high rises because downtown,
As
it's
long
old.
as long as they're owner occupied.
No, I'm talking about high rise commercial building
Oh, high rate commercial.
because the commercials don't add any kids to the school district. We could have some of the best schools in the planet because downtown is old and it needs inventory. So people are going to want to go to these anyway, that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, and I don't know the exact name of the school, but my friend is Mark Shepard. He's mayor of Clearfield, and he was telling me that one of the principals from one of these East Side or West Side Kaysville schools, who has had this really silly half-acre minimum zoning in place for the
Right.
last 20 years, which made sense 20 years ago,
Right.
when there was tons of land. But now it's become so expensive to live in that community that I think the kindergarten class dropped in half.
Wow.
Like 70%, or not 70, 30% of their classrooms are empty because nobody with school age children can afford to live there.
Right.
So that's another effect of these outdated policies in these half acre minimum
Right.
mentality. It's an outdated mentality. It's from the 90s. We don't have that much land left.
Right.
They need to shift the way that they think about growth because growth
Right.
is coming no matter what. And it's coming mostly from your kids,
Right.
from the kids of the people in your community. And there needs to be a major attitude shift. And so
Right.
that's what we're working on.
I've added my two post millennials though. They're post,
Yeah.
but I've added my two into the mix.
Well, and that's another thing too, is the guy from Davis County told me, and I believe Weaver County is the same. The biggest population block in Davis County, the 5-year window, it's between 10 and 15 years old.
Right. So
we
in
think
10 more years from now, 10, 15 years, what are you going to do with all those people?
Yeah. So
that's fine when they're living at home with mama.
Yeah.
So
So that's why, and I appreciate you having me on your
No,
podcast.
my absolute pleasure. because I mean, I knew about it, but I mean, it's nice to be a little more informed than I was,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know. And so let's kind of wrap this up with, you know, what should the audience do? I mean, number one, just learn and spread the word, right?
When it comes to density, because you're going to hear a lot about density in the
Right.
future, when it comes to density, support owner occupied density.
Right. So
I
it's got to be
think
owner occupied, right?
I think we've filled our apartment quota, and if builders want to build McMansions and custom homes, I say go for it.
Right.
Don't let the cities force them to build
Right.
half acre, quarter acre, an acre lot home because we don't have the water for it. Number one,
Right. Yeah.
that's
The water, all those lawns.
yeah, and that's what a lot of people don't understand is the water that's used in your household is recycled
Right.
and goes back to the Great Salt Lake. The water that's used on your lawns or your plants
Evaporates.
it goes in your it's what's called consumed. The
Right.
water company calls it, one is used but it's basically recycled. The other one is consumed. It's gone forever. So
Right.
you're essentially compounding the problem because unless you're on septic,
Right.
if you're in a sewer system, all the water you use in your house goes back to the Great Salt Lake.
Right.
So that's an interesting fact that I learned just this year, and it kind of blew me away. I'm like, okay, because that's one of the NIMBYism little weaponized things that they're using is, oh, well, you're going to use all the water. We're going to use it, and then it gets recycled. Yeah, when you force people to have an acre lot and they waste the water,
Yeah. And
that's
then make rules that they got to have it nice and green. It's
yeah,
like,
and then make rule, yeah, and
you
then
know,
that's the other thing too is when the cities get in the development process, they're like, well, we want 2 shrubs instead of 1.
right.
It's like, and that kind of thing. Well, we don't want stucco, we want hardy plank backer board, or we want brick, or we want this. They're
Right.
not designers, they're not architects, they're not landscapers, they don't need to be involved
No.
in the planning of the actual
Yeah. No.
proposal.
I'm totally against the cities on that. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like I said, I don't even like zoning,
It's
but
just it's just over regulated to
right.
development.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the historic, and then you get the historic communities. They drive me insane.
Well, I don't know anything about that, but I'm just
Well, you
saying
get these groups of people say, no, you have to have these kind of shutters. It's like, get off my property.
I
I'll shoot
I
you.
I'm just gonna be no comment on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So,
but all I can say to your your listeners, whoever listens to this, anybody you talk to, support owner occupied housing, no matter what it is.
okay.
We need just a massive supply of owner occupied units for sale under 450.
Right.
That's
Or we have to double everybody's wage. I mean, those are our two options.
yeah, where we double everybody's wage, which would just drive the prices up more.
You're
So
right. Right.
because again, we have a supply and demand disparity. That's all it is. We have a bigger demand than we have a supply. We have to resupply starter homes. That's it. That's
Right.
the whole answer. We need to resupply starter
Well, and
homes.
that's for the whole housing economy because people can't move up.
And it's not just us, it's the whole United States of America.
Right. Right. Right.
All these
It's
builders went
just
out
we
of
have a bigger
business.
problem because of our the way our age is. We have more people coming of age per
Yes.
capita than other states.
We're the youngest state in the union.
Right.
We're the youngest state in the country.
Right.
And our densest population is under 25.
Right.
So
Right. Under
uh,
25. Right.
so that's where we're at. So if
We're at the tip of the iceberg if we don't do something.
no, we're at the beginning, right?
Right.
That's why it's such a crisis. It's not a prediction anymore.
We're in it.
We've gone from prediction to crisis to emergency.
Right.
So we're gonna, as our association, and I believe the state association as well, and anybody that any realtor or any concerned homeowner wants to
Right.
see homeownership stay alive, basically. I mean, it's on my
Right.
support for the next generation. If you
Right.
want to see homeownership live, you need to really encourage your building community and your cities to resupply the starter home stock, whether that's condo, townhouse, small density, single family detached homes, whatever, skyrise buildings. I mean, if you're in a
Right.
city and you can support a big ass condo unit, go for it.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Why not? I mean, I
just,
heard a guy saying, yeah, we got to go from sticks and bricks to glass and steel, is what he said.
yeah. And
You know,
then
we
I
can't
don't
afford
know,
the three-story condos anymore. We got to go 20-story, you know?
that's not going to fly on the west side of I-15 where I live, but
No, no, but
uh,
you have,
it's
Salt Lake
available.
City.
Yes.
Why
Well,
not?
and that's the problem with Salt Lake City is they're putting up so many apartments because it's not in an opportunity zone, which just
Right,
breaks my heart. So
right,
that's why I keep pressing the word owner occupied, owner occupied,
right,
owner occupied, for sale, owner occupied units. That's what we need to get behind. That is what is missing.
right. Maybe we can tax non-owner occupieds a little higher.
I don't want to get into tax. I don't want to get into punishing. I want to get into motivating.
Right. There you go. All right. I can live with that.
You can motivate people to do stuff by education and motivation, but if you try to tax them or punish them or push them, they're
Right.
human beings, right? We're just all going to fight back on any kind of
Right.
intimidation
Yeah,
tactic.
they vote too.
But if we motivate people and get people excited about here's a solution, let's all move forward, then
Right.
everybody's working together.
Right. Gotcha.
So I think it works better.
Good stuff. So you mentioned a website earlier or a Google something. What was it? Some
So there's
not
a couple of things that you can look at. The Utah Housing Gap Coalition
that's the one.
has a,
Utah
has
Housing
a,
Gap
a
Coalition. Yeah.
ton of YouTube videos that we've been putting out that we've given to the cities. These are examples of presentations we've given to cities, and some of them are actual meetings that we've had with the cities. So we've been predicting this for a while.
Right. Right.
The reason I bring it up is a lot of the cities didn't believe us when we were predicting that. The next prediction is this is going to get a lot worse unless we do something today.
Right.
So it's like that old Chinese proverb goes, best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Right.
The
Today or
next
20
best
years
time
ago.
is right
Right.
now.
Right.
Today. So in 5 years, we don't go, God, I wish we'd have done something 5 years ago.
Exactly.
So anyhow, I think that that's where we're at. That's the state of the housing,
In Utah. Yeah, it's not looking pretty good.
I think
I mean, it's fixable, but we
I
got
feel
to
good about
act.
it.
We have to act.
It's going to be tough. I mean, don't get me wrong. This year's going to be really, really tough. But if we get back on the right track,
Right.
I feel like there's hope.
Right. I hear you. Okay.
So cool, man.
Great job.
Oh, the other one is if you want to go to the Standard Examiner, you go to standard.net and just Google Adam Speth.
Yeah. When we
or
stop the recording,
Google,
I'll get to all that information. I'll put the links under it.
Oh, you already stopped?
No. I said after I stop, we can talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. So, and those, we're just getting started. It's just it's just an initiative that I'm pushing as a president, and I've got a ton of support for it with my members.
Yep.
And with
well, you have my support. I mean, I'm here. I mean, I am who I am. I have a platform. I have a voice. So let's use it.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and you'll see me doing this in the future because my little newspaper article today was kind of the let's get this going, and your podcast, and
Not going to hurt.
I'm doing a presentation for the Home Builders Association, Northern Wasatch Home Builders Association, this month, and like I said, I feel like just educating people. I just don't think people understand. The more they understand,
right,
the more we can tackle this thing.
Yeah, we need to get you in front of more media. Like, we got the City Weekly in Salt Lake. I mean, we got some of these smaller newspaper outlets that I think would love to handle the story.
I would, as long as I can control the narrative. I've been on the news before, and
right. No,
I have a 20-minute interview, and they use 5 seconds of it for
one word. Right.
Yeah.
No, I know. Yeah, they're not in the business of informing people. They're in the business of selling commercials.
Exactly. Right. So,
no, I get it.
But if I'm able to push the
narrative, right,
and our message as our realtor association, that it stays on point. It's really simple. It's just supply and demand.
Right.
We've been neglecting the
The
supply
supply
of
side.
starter homes, and we need to fill that bucket back up.
Perfect. Okay.
Thanks,
Well,
Rob.
great job, man. Thanks for coming. And then and that's it.
Okay.